tell us a bit how you are using archives in your dealing with the past work at Documenta?
Documentation is essential, as our name, Documenta, says. It's a base of everything. So it's that in order to preserve the memory and to remember either war or crimes or political violence or repression, it is very important to gather whatever can be accessed, collected, so that researchers of all generations can continue their work, and that interested newcomers can eventually see what have happened in a time which they maybe have not experienced. It is important for contemporaries, but it's important also for people who might even not be born. So it's something what I would say it's the responsibility of this generation to protect, so that the important traces will not be lost. Because if there was violence, surely it left traces. It maybe have left wounds, it maybe have left severe trauma for a person who was violated, but also for a family, maybe for a community, maybe for a whole society. And that it is important for them to know what happened. But it's also important for community and society to know about what happened, so that they understand, so that they can see them in complexity of violent events, and that together we can make steps to acknowledge suffering and gradually, when possible, to heal, so that right to truth, right to justice, right to reparations and guarantee of non-reoccurrence will be respected.
And how does the public use your archive and your records, your files you have?
Our files can be accessed physically in space where we work. We work in Human Rights House in Zagreb with 5 other organizations. So people can visit us, they can go through our papers. We also have an information system, which is now in a stage in which we are developing applications which will allow broader use. Our web pages are, for example, only place where people can access information on the crime, from indictment to the court proceedings, first level verdict and final verdict of Supreme Court. So it's an important source, because when courts publish it, they publish just what is relevant for that court, without indictment. So it's actually a place where people can get a more complete picture. What we would like to achieve in years to come is eventually to present data which we have on different crimes, so that people can follow data on crimes in which there was no prosecution. Eventually police maybe did their work, but there was never indictment. And we also want to make available more information on the ways how people remember, how communities remember, how institutions remember, and what they choose to forget, and what they choose to remember, and how they do that.
Does that mean you have a broad understanding of what is an archive? So even a human can be somehow an archive?
Absolutely. It is that we record also personal memories which are stored in our archive, and we work on making these interviews accessible through internet, but that's still not possible. So in this moment they can be accessed only in our archive, but I hope this will change sometime in 2013 or 2014. It's very difficult to actually present 370 interviews on internet in a manner which is appropriate, so that they are searchable and more accessible. But it's also important to preserve personal memories. So on one side are papers, either they are papers of state institutions, sometimes security services, sometimes military, sometimes simply libraries, or documentation produced by civil society organizations. We find that it's very important also to preserve information on work of peace organizations, human rights organizations, and organize it in a way to make it more accessible. because it is unfortunate if we are only aware of crimes. It's very important to preserve also a memory of work of people who have been against violence. So one part of our work is also that we publish manuals how to organize documentation in a simple way, so that it's actually searchable, and it can, if it's not currently accessible, become accessible in the future. Access to archives is something that is very important in respect for human rights and in respecting human dignity, especially when someone's rights are violated. So it's that currently you cannot eventually access most of documentation related to the newest history, and we are preparing a campaign together with other organizations and universities to eventually change this legislation. Although there is a law on free access to information, in Croatia that's not enough, because some laws are contradicting each other, and especially when it comes to documentation of security services and military, the very strict rules are applied, and I would say that part of the documentation is labeled confidential without any real reason and should be accessible to public.
Are you regionally cooperating with other organizations who do similar work?
We do cooperate with organizations in Croatia, in other post-Yugoslav countries, because there are tasks which we can only carry on together, and it's that we are also extending our cooperation in Europe now, because I believe that for right to truth, access to archives, it's the first essential step, and we can help each other in making sure that we somehow reach legislation which would open archives more widely.
Thank you. That was
Thank you.
good.